Welcome to Sam's Book Club. For the 12 weeks of this series, we're looking at some incredible books for 3 different areas. And these areas are leadership, branding, and digital marketing. And the book today, contrary to the email that you have received, is by Marshall Goldsmith that says, "What got you here won't get you there." The book that you saw on the email that I sent on Miriam's behalf, so it was my fault. The email that you received was about next week's book, which is an amazing book that uses military language and lessons, and it's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, I think. And it's a great book. I've read it a couple of times, and I'm sure that you'll get great lessons from next week, Extreme Ownership. But this week, Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So I told you a little bit of my experience last week. I'll mention that experience again. So my first 11 years of ministry since I finished my master's was in England in various churches. So Holloway Church in North London, shout out to Holloway. Wimbledon International Seventh-day Adventist Church, that's the church that I was a senior pastor for. And then Stamborough Park Church. So 3 churches in 11 years. And there was also Muswell Hill as part of a district that was attached, and other churches that were attached to these districts. And throughout that period, I was told that you cannot argue with results. That's what I was told. And if you have the results on your side, get it done, and people cannot argue with results. What I have discovered, as some of you have also, is that you can argue with results. There are some people that it doesn't matter what results come. If you rub them off the wrong way, you will pay the price. And that price is that they will be against you and everything that you are trying to achieve. So the same thing that you would get with an evangelist that is trying to move whatever project you're working on forward, these people will try to destroy you and your projects. And I had plenty of those in my experience. And I never quite understood why, because I was always blaming them. When I arrived at the general conference for this new challenge that was ahead of me, I opened all of the boxes and I found one box that had a book that I did not recognize having before. And it was this book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I thought, fantastic, that's a good read. I need a book to read. And a friend of mine gave me the book, and I had forgotten about it, and somehow it made it to this box, and at the right time, I opened it. I believe God wanted me to read that book at just that right time, because in reading the book, I realized that all of the things that happened was not someone else's fault. It was 100% my fault. It was my lack of leadership skills. It was my lack of wisdom in the right moments to do things properly. So I would like to go through this list of 21 things that we need to all get better at. There are some things that you are amazing at. There are others that you're probably struggling with, and you don't know you're struggling with. Many of these I thought was a fantastic advantage, and turns out that it wasn't at all a fantastic advantage. So the 21 things, and I have a few notes here, and we are going through them, not in order. We're just going through them, and some of them we won't mention, but some of them are really important. So the first one that I always thought was brilliant is adding too much value. This one I really, really struggle with to this day. And every time I go through this book, and every 6 months I read this book again, this is one of those recurrent books in my life, I always remember that I'm not there yet on this. And this is a very basic principle. Somebody comes to you with an idea, right? That's a beautiful thing. People come to you with an idea. And you take that idea and you think, okay, that's a brilliant idea. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to really embody the idea, and I'm going to give some value to it. Well, have you considered doing this? What about that? What about this? What about the other? And by the time the person finishes with you, the project has taken on a new dimension. And I always thought that was a wonderful thing. It isn't. And the reason why it isn't is simple. When the person presents an idea to you, If you add value, too much value to that idea, by the time they leave, it is no longer their idea. You have just usurped their idea. You have just taken their idea to yourself. And you think you may have gotten a lot of value added, and now the person is going to get out even more excited. 99% of human beings will not leave that room, that office, that conversation more excited than when they come in, because now it's no longer their idea. And I noticed that many leaders, especially in the general conference, had learned this, and I had not. Because when I would come to them and I would say, here's a thought, we could do this, that, and the other. And they would just smile at me and say, that's a brilliant idea, let's do it. And I would leave excited that this is an idea that I had, and now somebody believed in that idea, and I would do it. But the times when leaders said to me, okay, but we need to do this, 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 we need to do that, we need to do the other, and they added value, guess what? I left with less motivation to do it because it was no longer my idea. So as a leader within this digital evangelism initiative, it is very important to remember that you just listen to the ideas and you don't need to comment on everything. If there is something dangerous, maybe you say something. Otherwise, just let the person take it to the next level and present the idea in a better way, and just keep reiterating the creative process. But it's their idea, not yours. When somebody's implementing their own idea, they will have incredible motivation to make it work. If they're implementing your idea, it's less motivating. So that's something that I need to struggle with a lot, because somehow I'm sometimes quite creative. So when somebody comes with an idea, for me, it's just, wow, amazing. And I can see all these dimensions. And then I remember, shut your mouth is my internal voice talking to me. Just be quiet, say thank you, say it's amazing. And you know, they will be much more motivated to do it. So before we go to the next one, any thoughts from our panelists and others that are here with us on this? Have you experienced anything like that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts?
No, Sam, that's a perfect idea. It's beautiful. I think you should run with it.
Thank you, Kyle. All right. Any other thoughts? All right, good. Let's go to the next one. Adding too much value is what we just did. Next one is passing unnecessary judgment. Now, when we're talking to each other about any given thing, usually other people, we often pass judgment. We use a little word here and there which has a negative or usually a negative connotation, and we don't need to say the whole thing, but we now judged someone else's opinion. This has an incredible impact on a team, and we should absolutely not do it because we lose the trust of our team when we do that. This training is particularly geared for CEOs. So if you're leading an organization, and if we have the ability to lead, then this is the level that we want to imagine ourselves as we lead our teams, because they can grow. Next, starting with no, but, and however. Have you noticed that there are some people that are constantly disagreeable? I think, Eric, usually you're a panelist. I don't know what happened. You're not today. Let me change that. Eric, you wanted to mention something? I just saw in the comments. Go ahead if you do. Not unmuting, so I presume not. Okay. Some people are so disagreeable, and usually we take disagreeable people and we put them in positions of leadership. That's what we do. If somebody's very agreeable, we don't put them in a position of leadership. That's normally how it happens. So if you're a very agreeable person, if you like relationships to the point that getting along is more important than getting the job done, you will find yourself with less opportunities for management. We don't like managers that just agree with everybody, because that frustrates the whole team. And maybe you've been there before. You know, you have one team member that comes to you and says, you know, boss, this is what we should do, A, B, C. And then you say, that's a good idea, go for it. And then the next person comes and said, you know what we should do, D, E, F. And it's in direct opposition to A, B, C. And a peaceful leader will simply say, you know what, we should explore that. Let's try and do that. And inevitably, there will be great conflict, because when the leader, if the number one priority to the leader is peace, you can absolutely count that for a while it will be peaceful, and then it will turn into a living hell for you and your team. So be very careful as a leader if peace is your number one goal. It's a bad idea. Normally, we put people that are disagreeable in positions of management. What got them here is the ability to get it done. But once they are here, that disagreeableness, that bulldozer kind of spirit of saying, we're going to get this done no matter what, well, that stops you from being able to lead properly, because you are constantly against others. So there are people that even when they agree with you, they start the sentence with no. That's a remarkable thing that normally happens. So let me take an example here. Kyle, I see you on the screen at the moment. Go ahead and give me a sentence that you know I would agree with.
I'm a really good worker.
No, you're right. You're right. You're a good worker. You see, I started with no. And there are some people that always start with no. There are others that sometimes start with however or but. They are in a constant state of defense. It's like there are people attacking them from all over the place, and they need to stand up for themselves. And so they always start with no. If you do that, you would create an unnecessary team spirit of negativity and aggression toward each other, not collaboration. So if you start with no, but, and however, you will not create a great environment. So what's the best response when people give you information and they give you something that you may or may not agree with? Just say thank you. If you absolutely forget what this book is about, in other words, if you're like, okay, what was that book about? Just remember these words. Just say thank you. That is it. And we're going to come across more of these things down there as we go through the notes. And let me just lean into this a little bit. When somebody criticizes you, when somebody comes to you and says something negative about you, what is your normal reaction? How do you normally, if you're a human being, you usually start feeling some body hormones, and you start feeling some things different in your body as you are listening to this. Unless you are drenched in serotonin, which comes, by the way, by your team respecting you tremendously. Unless you're drenched in serotonin, if somebody comes and says, I have some constructive criticism about something you did, immediately your body reacts. Or somebody says, and somebody that you respect, even worse, they come and tell you, I have something that I notice in your behavior, which I think you should get better at. It doesn't matter how much the person loves you. Even your mother telling you that will cause a reaction in your body. And what's your immediate reaction when somebody criticizes you? That is the mark of a team player. That is the mark of maturity. For you to listen to it, consider it, and what's the solution? What's the best response when somebody does that? Just say thank you. What if you don't agree? Thank you. What if you are eating yourself alive inside? Thank you. Now, thank you is incredibly powerful at a biological level. We touched on this a few weeks ago. So, the book mentions it, and it happened to me, and it happened to every husband who ever lived after cars were invented, and probably horse and carriages before that. So the husband is driving down the road. Wife sees the car coming across first. He is about to run through the lights. She knows it's going to change. She yells out, be careful. And the guy who's seen all of this happen and is about to press the brakes, what's the normal reaction of a beginner in marriage in this reaction? What does the beginner do? The beginner explodes. And they turn and they say, look, do you want to drive? I could see the car, but if you want to drive, that's fine. So there is that resentment. And immediately what happens is that your body believes that somebody's attacking you, and you get a flooding of cortisol, because when somebody's attacking you, cortisol is what your body needs. And you feel it, you're nervous, your body reacts, and then you're heading down the road, and it takes a while. And then if you are if you have some experience in marriage, you would say sorry, you know, within the next few hours. If you're really a beginner, then it will take you a while to say sorry, and some husbands just don't get it. But here is the opposite of that. Somebody just potentially criticized you. What should you say? Thank you. Do you think your wife was trying to ruin your life or disrespect you? No, she was trying to save you. And what do you say to somebody that's trying to save you? Do you go off at them? No, you say thank you. The first time that I tried this, it was incredible because I said thank you. I didn't want to say thank you. I read the book and I didn't want to say thank you. I wanted to tell Amy what, you know, my wife, that she didn't need to help me. But I decided to follow the advice of the book and I said thank you. It was incredible. The difference in my body reaction within the next few minutes. My body, you know, later studying this, my body's like, my goodness, this guy spends the whole day saying thank you. That means everybody's trying to help him. Serotonin, 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 which is the hormone of status. We have a hormone that measures our status within any given community. It's called serotonin. And when you feel like you are higher in a hierarchy than others in a particular field, you produce serotonin. And this is an amazing thing, because if you say thank you all day long, your brain believes that everybody around you is trying to help you. Therefore, this guy must be something. Everybody's trying to help him. Serotonin, serotonin, serotonin. It's beautiful. And then it regulates your mood. You become a very happy person. You know, your body functions are working well. It's an amazing hormone. And how do you get it? By saying thank you. Oh, leadership is so stressful, I can't take it. Say thank you more and you will find the difference right there. Because normally, if you're in a position of leadership, everybody's trying to help you. That's normally the case. But you begin to interpret that people are not doing what they should be, and sometimes that's the case. And if your body starts to interpret that you're being disrespected and that people are trying to attack you, then it's a problem. And this is something that, you know, my team, especially in the Philippines, should pay very close attention to. Sometimes I go through a process of saying something that could be construed as negative about you, either just to yourself or when there are others in the room. And if you react with no, but, however, and try to defend it, etc., I immediately know you're not mature enough for a higher level of leadership. I know it immediately. And there are other leaders here that have great experience. You know this too, that when you tell somebody that they're doing something that they could be done better, and they react with a defense mechanism, even if they're right, it doesn't matter. They haven't had the maturity yet to handle it. So if you want God to take you to the next level and improve your circle of influence so that you could do more for him, which is the purpose of this book club, then saying thank you is an absolutely incredible thing, because your boss and others would know that you are mature and that you know how to handle criticism. You see, you don't have to be worried that your boss will think that you make mistakes. They already know that. They knew that when they hired you. You're a human being, and making mistakes is something that we all do. What we really want to know is, how do you react when you do that? How do you react when somebody notices that you dropped the ball? Do you take responsibility for it, or do you try to blame your colleague? Because my 8-year-old is beginning to learn that. And if you haven't learned it now that you are, 20-something, 30-something, and some of us at 60-something, still struggle with taking responsibility and moving forward. Okay. Next, displaying how smart we are. Any extroverts in the room? Clever extroverts will always try to show you how smart they are. I spent most of my life trying to show everybody how smart I was. You don't need to, and that's a difficult lesson to learn. You just don't need to. People don't trust those that are constantly trying to demonstrate how smart they are. And this, to extroverts, this is a daily battle that you need to win. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. So be careful with that. Don't try to constantly display how smart you are. And you notice in meetings, there are some people in meetings, you know that there is no need for them to comment this. Or they start with, hey, when I worked on this and this project, and it has nothing to do with what they're saying, they just want to drop that in. You know, when I used to work with Pastor Vanderman, you know, just like, okay, great. And sometimes people use these things as authority hooks, and it becomes a sign of insecurity. By the third time someone does it in a meeting with me, I immediately, you know, there is a tick that goes, that person, they're so far insecure. How can I help them to become more secure in what they're doing? So that's an important thing for you to remember. Withholding information, right? So sometimes you know that your colleague, another team, needs to have this information, but nobody asked you, so you're not going to give it. Well, that's the fastest way for your team not to respect you. Next, failing to give recognition. When somebody does something and you absorb the glory of what they did. As a boss, here's the thing, as a boss, everything you're involved with is reflected on how fantastic your work is. You don't have to absorb the credits. In fact, the more you pass on the credits to your team members in a genuine way, the more your bosses will respect you and the more your team will respect you. I remember a long time ago, a leader in an organization asked me to write a manual for them. It was a book, and it would be my first book, and I wrote it. And when the book came out, guess what? My name was nowhere to be seen. It was just his name, as if he had written the book. So this is when, you know, you need to be a master of forgiveness, a ninja of forgiveness, because there will be leaders that will ask you to do something and they will want to absorb all of the glory that comes from the project and from your work. Run away from those leaders. They do not deserve your best. The people that deserve your best are those that are willing to say that God gave the idea to this person and this person delivered on it. That's the kind of leader that we need. So never, ever fail to give recognition or claim undue credit. When you claim undue credit, then it's even worse. So try to avoid this and try to avoid the perception of this. You know, let's imagine that you are a leader and you need to deliver on something. And it is your team leader who's going to present your work. Okay, so you get the idea, right? You've just done something. You spent 6 hours doing something, and your team leader is now going to present it to the leadership team or to whoever, the work that you did. How would you feel if after the meeting, or even during, somebody who is part of that meeting sends you a private text saying, well done for what you did? How do you feel that your boss has just mentioned that it was your work in a positive way? Now, how are you going to react when that leader asks you to do something else? You see, being a leader and giving recognition and giving credit to others is the fastest way to get the hearts of the people that you're leading. And if you don't have their hearts, you have nothing. No amount of money can buy someone's heart. And if you're working in a corporation and you hate your job, then this is your everyday reality. You know, leave that and come and minister at the Digital Evangelism Initiative. That's the plug. Okay, refusing to express regret. There are some people that apparently they never make mistakes. They never make a wrong decision and they never need to apologize. Some of them are leaders with incredible influence, and very few people want to follow them, because it is important that you acknowledge mistakes and that you acknowledge regret. It's very important. Next, making destructive comments. Let me tell you something. In any team, in the General Conference in particular, I heard, and if you're not familiar with the General Conference, it's the global headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I work in the communications department. So when I arrived, people told me, look, it doesn't matter what happens when you go traveling, do not talk about any of your colleagues here in any negative way. If it's positive, you can talk away. But if it's negative, don't, because before your plane lands back in Washington, D.C., they already know what you said with some bonus. And I promise you, that's exactly what happens. Nothing remains silent. Nothing remains a secret. So if you have to talk about a colleague, find a way for it to be positive. If it's negative and you have access to them, then talk to them. Find a way to help them. Because if you speak negatively against others, what do you think the person listening will believe about you? They're not going to trust you because they know that the next person they'll talk badly about is them. So they will absolutely withdraw from you. They will no longer want to be vulnerable near you. And if there is no vulnerability, there is no connection. So said Brené Brown, amen. So we need vulnerability in our teams. And the fastest way to destroy vulnerability is to speak against someone else, making destructive comments against them. Now, this next one is probably my favorite. Okay, so of all the habits that will absolutely destroy your ministry and your leadership, this one is probably on top. And that is winning too much. Winning too much. If you decide that you're going to win everything, you are about to lose everything. It's just, okay, so I'm looking at Eric and Esther here. You know, I'm going to pick on you because you look like a beautiful couple there. So let me pick on you. So you decide that even with COVID, you're going to venture out to a restaurant because you're tired of just being home. And then, you know, Eric, you have an idea of which restaurant to go. And Esther, you have a very different idea of which restaurant to go. And then, you know, you give your arguments. Eric gives his arguments. And in the end, you decide to go to the restaurant you decided, Esther, because the last word always belongs to Eric. Yes, love. So you go to the restaurant and you're there beautifully, you know, sitting down. And Eric said, and it happened. He said, "This restaurant, we're gonna get there. The line is gonna be too long to get in. We're gonna wait half an hour before we sit down. By the time we sit down, the food's gonna be cold, and we're gonna be too tired by the time it's finished." And guess what? That's exactly what happens.
Told you so.
You see, at that point, halfway through, Eric has to make a decision, okay? Is he going to win or not? Okay? Is he going to win or not? And that decision is, let me show you, this is Eric and Esther. There they are, beautiful. And he needs to decide whether he's going to win or not. So if he decides, I'm going to win, he can't resist. He has to win at everything. So he looks at her and says, like you said before, I told you this would happen. Sure, he won. But here's the thing. He's got to go home with a loser. And nobody likes living with a loser. So did he win? That night will be very quick. And so I bet you he has not won. He's lost because he wanted to win. So we need to be very careful. There are very few things in life and in projects where winning really, really matters. And you need to focus on those. So, you know, we have some experience where I've had leaders that wanted to win in everything. And I couldn't wait to leave that team because, you know, you don't want a constant competition with your own team. And this is something we all need to learn. There is such thing as competition, but it's not with each other. It is with the world. And we need to you know, be victorious over the many things in the world, but our competition is not with each other. Stop trying to win all the time. Now, my children, I have a 10-year-old who will struggle with this. Oh boy. James has to win at everything, every argument, everything. And this is characteristic of people that are in leadership. So CEOs, if you look at when they were children, you know, prime ministers, presidents, they were usually very competitive and they liked winning at absolutely everything. We like putting those people in charge because they start winning for us. But if you want to lead your team, you need to choose what you're going to fight against or what you're going to win. Speaking when angry. Some things make us angry. At that moment, don't speak. Don't write the email. Don't communicate. Wait until your cortisol goes down. Why? Because when we are angry, our cortisol goes up immediately. And with cortisol and adrenaline, something happens to our frontal lobe. We lose the capacity for morality when we are angry. It is diminished. Not that we lose it, but it's diminished. So cortisol takes away your philosophizing. And the reason is simple. God created it. When you are in grave danger and there is a lion in the room, you're not going to philosophize about Simba and Mufasa. You're going to get out of the room as soon as possible. And so it stops you from overthinking and gets you to act with your body. That's cortisol. And if you speak in that period of time, you will destroy some bridges that you took months to build. Don't have any enemies. Don't have any enemies. That was one of the great advices that I received in ministry. Don't have any enemies. It's not worth it. You're going to work with these people until Jesus comes, and guess what? For eternity. So you may as well get along. Don't make excuses. Again, all children make excuses. A sign of maturity is to stop making them. A sign of maturity is to stop making excuses. Okay, question here from Giselle. What if they take your silence as an offense also? So Giselle, in the question time, in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then please bring that up again. We're going to go a little bit deeper about what you mean by this comment here. So making excuses. You're late to a meeting. You try not to be, but sometimes it happens. You're late to a meeting. Don't give excuses or reasons why you're late. Simply apologize for being late. Friends, I apologize for being late. It is unacceptable. Please accept my apologies. I'm sorry. That's it. Oh, but I should explain that the microwave blew up. I should explain that this problem and that problem. Look, your friends don't need your reasons and your enemies don't believe you. So there is no point providing the reasons. It is much better to not have any excuses ever. So you simply apologize or take responsibility for it, but there is no point giving excuses. If you are in a brainstorming exercise to find how something went wrong and what happened, then by all means, then that's the time to bring up the reasons why something did not work, but don't be as a response to your actions as if you are creating an excuse. Clinging to the past. This one is a really difficult one because we love psychology and we love going, the reason why I'm like this is because I was not hugged as a child. Or the reason why I'm like this is because, and you provide another reason that has something to do with some trauma that you had in the past. Stop it. Just stop it. If you need to act in a certain way to lead, then start acting in that way and lead. Don't provide constant reasons why you cannot do that or you cannot be like this, and so on. And that's another element, which is being too much me. There are some people that, this is me. I'm just like this. I'm not going to change. Well, why not? Everybody's capable of changes. And remember, what got you here won't get you there. So you have to change. The people skills that you need to activate between managerial level and anything above that, it is very important that you change. Change is absolutely important. Now, this new generation says this, self-esteem nonsense. Hey, you are wonderful exactly as you are, which is probably the worst thing you can tell somebody because they know they're not. All of us know our inadequacies and our lack of capacity for lots of things. So if you tell me I'm perfect the way I am, I don't need to change, that is terrible news for me because that means maybe I cannot change. Maybe I should just compromise and accept who I am. No. The good news is the opposite. The good news is that you are nowhere near what you need to be to fulfill the task that God laid out for you. But God will make it possible for you to do it. He will give you the ability to do it. He will capacitate you. He will find a way to to develop you to the point that you will deliver in it. Why? Not because you are ready. You're not, but you can be. The good news is that you can be. The good news is that you can read more books. The good news is that you can watch more videos. The good news is that you can choose better mentors. The good news is that you can do it. God will find a way for you to do it. You are not okay as you are. God wants you to transform you. You know, as C.S. Lewis puts it, and if you're not familiar with Christianity and you found this on YouTube later, check this out. The point of Christianity isn't to make you a better person. If that's what you were sold, it's not the point. It's C.S. Lewis says you're a little shack, and you would be content to become a mansion, you know, where some destruction is needed, but you turn into a mansion. That's just a good person. No, God is going to destroy your shack and is going to keep building until it's a palace worthy of him to live in. So he wants you to become like Jesus, and there is nothing that you can do for yourself to become like Jesus. You're not even capable. So he sends his Holy Spirit to help you in one and in the other way and the other way, and you're nowhere near where you need to be. But God every day is giving you opportunities to learn more and to go forward. That's the good news. So don't cling to the past. Don't make excuses. Don't have an excessive need to be me. I've worked with some leaders who say, no, I just don't do that. It's not me. Well, that's your glass ceiling. What can God do with you if you're not willing to change? Well, nothing. He's going to wait for you to change, but you build your own glass ceilings in your leadership, and you don't need to. You just need to allow yourself to go through this transformative process. Playing favorites is also a terrible thing. And in every team, there are some people that are closer to you than others, and your team members know this. And so you have to go the extra mile to avoid the perception that you're just working with a select few. And it's difficult. It's very difficult to do that. Sometimes you need to build your relationship with your team and find ways to just connect without any business. Just connect at a human level, and don't play favorites as much as you can. And no leader accepts that they play favorites, but every leader plays favorites. No leader accepts that they play favorites, but if you're leading more than 2 people, you will. And if you're a parent, there are some activities that you would rather do with one of your children and not the other. Testify, brethren. Yeah. Okay, so not listening. Oh, that's a big one for control country people. So if you're very choleric, then you don't know how to listen. When I was in Wimbledon International Seventh-day Adventist Church, where Heroes was created, the game that you see behind, we did a lot of stuff in the church. Okay, some crazy stuff that I absolutely should not have done. We did the entire front of the church. We painted the entire front of the church with a white wall. We made it into a white wall, and then we painted these heroes. David, see David over there, and Ruth. Where is Ruth? She's just behind. As 12-foot high mural of David and Ruth, you know, in full muscle. Even Ruth had muscle. And this is an Adventist church. And if you don't know much about the Adventist church, here's my advice to you. Don't do that. Of all that, you should not do that. And the reason why I did it is because the absolute majority of the church was excited by this, right? So the church has, 200, 300 people coming along. And apart from 9 people, everybody was like, yeah, I like it. So, it's just 9 people. And those 9 people kept repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And they said this, Pastor Sam, you just don't listen. I'm like, I'm listening. I just don't want to obey what you're saying because I think you're wrong. But I am listening. I was not listening. Because listening is something that is an experience of the person being listened to. And that's the difficult part. What do you need to do so that the person who's trying to tell you something would agree that they were heard? That's very difficult because some people will be very negative about anything that you bring up, but they still need to be heard. So if there's a lot that we can say about this. But you need to become a better listener. There's a section of the book that talks about that. My suggestion is that you find the book and go through the details of it, because they're quite extensive and we're not going to cover it here. But being a great listener is very important. Sometimes projects need to be delayed so that you can listen more to the opinions of the team members. And sometimes projects need to go faster because you are listening. So it's very difficult to prescribe how this works, but listening is an important skill. Next difficult one is punishing the messenger. Okay, so punishing the messenger. You come to somebody and you give them the news about something and they begin to go off on you. Okay, so you come to somebody and let's say you come to me and you say, Pastor Sam, that campaign that we were doing? Well, it failed. We were expecting 200,000 people to connect and we have 60,000 people connected. And then this is an important campaign and I become upset. And what do? All of my upsetness goes off against the messenger, the person who just told me. And I go off and they're looking at me going, there's nothing I could have done differently. It's not even my project. And eventually I calm down. But guess what? Do you think that person will respect me as a leader? Absolutely not. So leadership is earned, is not given. It doesn't matter what position you have. You need to earn the respect and the permission that others give you so that you can lead them. And punishing the messenger is one of the fastest ways to lose that immediately. Next, blame everyone except yourself. So why did this fail? Well, there was this. What part did you play in it? Nothing. Well, you're not ready. And next, goal obsession. And this is the last of the 21 that we'll focus on. So goal obsession is when you decide that you're going to bulldozer everyone and everything because you're going to achieve this goal. Don't miss the forest for the trees. What does that mean? Sometimes you look so closely in one detail that you miss the full picture. You're so attached to one thing that you're trying to fix that you lose the greater goal. Next week, we're going to talk about commander's intent. You lose the commander's intent. You lose that big picture. And that means that even if you achieve your goal, you would not help with the larger goal. So those are the 21 things 21 habits that are outlined in the book. Now, the final thought that I want to bring from the book is the idea of, instead of feedback, let's give me some feedback about this, that, and the other. No, it's feed forward. Let's feed forward. And that's an amazing thing that you can do with your team immediately. And I'll outline this, very quickly here. There are many steps. You can read about the steps. I hope that you have read about the steps. But essentially, you will go to somebody in your team and you'll say, I'm really looking to improve. Can you give me one area that I absolutely need to improve on, in your opinion? And they will give you that area. Well, okay, I think you could do better. Be a better listener. What do you say? Don't go into it. But I listen to you all the time. We spend hours talking. What do you mean? No, just thank you. That's excellent. Do you have any ideas about how I could do that in the future? Because there's nothing I can do to change the past. It's possible that I've been a terrible listener. And if that's the case, please accept my sincere apologies. There is something that I can do about the future. Do you have an idea that you could give me about how I could be better at this? And write it down and then do it. And 6 months later, or however the time frame allows, you come back to that person and say, okay, have you noticed any improvements in this? You've just turned your team into an absolute center of everybody helping everybody. Because that's the point. You need to be in a team that everybody's trying to help everybody, because we all want each other's success. There is competition. It's just not with each other. Just if you focus on the right competition, it will be excellent. And of course, the best time to start all of this is right now. So let me open up to the panelists. Do you have any thoughts or comments about anything that we had talked about? or something else that you want to point out, let me know now and we'll get people to speak. And if you have, if you're on the right here on the attendee list and you want to speak, just click the little hand and you will come up. Justin Woods, go for it, sir.
Hey, I just wanted to say that I've been guilty of almost every single one of these at some point or another. Probably most of us have, but what an amazing thing to have them clearly identified so that you can see them and do something about them. So just wanted to say thank you for that.
It's excellent. Every 6 months I go through and then I identify a couple that I need to work on. And it's so disheartening sometimes, Justin, that I look back and I go, this one's been on my list for 2 years and I still haven't managed to tick it off. And yeah, it's a process. And some of them, I don't know, maybe this side of the new earth, I will never get there. But God find ways of helping. So yeah, it's definitely worth putting in a list and being very strategic about, this is what I want to get better at. Okay. Any other thoughts?
You know, I actually did exactly what you're talking about. So I've identified, I actually started by identifying the ones I felt like I was doing well, because I thought that would be a little more encouraging to me. So I identified, like, these are the ones I've done well. And then I actually enjoyed seeing areas that I've grown. So like I could see areas where 6 months ago, I don't think I would have ticked myself off in the more positive category of it. And that was actually kind of nice, you know, to see, like, how have I grown as a person? And then, you know, you identify the ones that aren't maybe your most fabulous points. But the nice part is I like being able to reflect. How have I grown? Because it's easy for us sometimes, if you're maybe a personality like me, where you can see a lot of the negative in yourself, but you sometimes miss all the areas that you've grown. How have you gotten better? Because when you see that you are growing, it gives you confidence in the areas where you are struggling, because you know that they are doable. They are something that you can take care of. And I also just want to throw something out, Sam. You were talking earlier about how, as a husband, your reaction on the road. I'm just going to point out, from driving on crazy West Virginia roads all day today, it's not just a husband. And your wife.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Respond correctly.
Excellent. Look, Alicia Lawrence is asking here on the chat. Let me put here. Okay, she's asking, what about micromanagers? Sometimes you work with a leader who takes your suggestion, but then tells you how they think you should do it. Or they delegate tasks to you and then submit a way or outline of what you should do, not allowing your creative juices to follow. How do you deal with such persons? So let me ask.
I have an answer for, well, not
Okay.
an answer, but maybe. I think I've been, along my life, I've been with several people who are like that. I'm their child, so I have many micromanagers in my life. So maybe this is where my experience can help. No, I think it depends on your attitude, because like many of the things that Sam said is you have to be able to be humble, that you always have something to learn from others. So then in this particular personality, I think it helps when you identify why they're being that way. For example, I know it's kind of weird that you're trying to understand your boss or your leader or whoever is trying to micromanage, but it helps to like kind of see the problem in their own shoes. Let's say if that person is trying to micromanage, why is he trying to do that? Maybe it's a person who's really focused on quality, and maybe they want to focus on the reputation of how they're going to look if something comes out wrong, or they're very committed to the mission or the objective of the company, of the team. I don't know. Other times it's because they're obsessive and they have personality issues. Also that comes in play, but sometimes it helps to understand the whole situation, kind of step back and see it more practical way, because then if you keep being in the middle of the situation, then it doesn't help. Once you understand that, it's easier for you to say, okay, if equality is the issue, then I'm going to focus on quality. And then okay, sorry. Yummy. It depends on the quality. Then you focus on quality. You're trying to gain their trust that you are like understand their point of view. Okay, if that's quality, I don't know. You make sure that you're feeling all those things. But once you do that, then it helps for the other person to start building trust on you, because you're delivering what they want. And then it helps, it reduces their level of anxiety, I think, for them, because of course that's anxiety in their own way of controlling that everything is going to be great. So if you kind of see it in the other perspective and say, okay, I am, let's say that's my boss, so I need to focus on quality. How can I do better in this? Once you do that and you see the results, then your work speaks louder than your words, right? And then they start trusting you more and more and more. And then the level of anxiety in their part is reduced. And then the trust start kind of going up. So you are not going to be able to change the person, so might as well understand it. And also you have to be very aware of your boundaries, like your own self, you know, your weakness and your strengths, because then if you know that your strength is what the other person or the boss is really worried about, then you are going to see it as a area of growth. And then you can take advantage of that. In a way, you take control of the situation. You don't allow the situation or the other person controls what you are gonna feel or behave. And that's when you can kind of turn around and make it more manageable, because you're gonna have that person maybe for, I don't know, how period of time. But then it's doable when you kind of take control of your behavior, your situation, instead of trying to agree or make the other person happy, because he's not going to be happy.
Excellent.
You're not going to be it.
Excellent. Thank you. We always talk about disagreeable people becoming more agreeable. This is an area that I agree with Karen. We need to become sometimes more disagreeable. And, you know, I've encountered this even, you know, in the last few years, and especially when there are, one of the things that we did not talk about is that CEOs don't give suggestions. CEOs give orders. So be very careful if you're a leader. The higher the leader you are, the less you can open your mouth. And because everything that you do, everything that you say is exactly what people will do. So the author gives us, tells a story of a guy who's a CEO of a company, and he's always being very creative and so on. And then the design team brings a new product and he goes, you know, blue would be really cool with this. What do you think? He was just suggesting. Guess what? Next week, everything is blue. And then he goes, well, I'm not sure about the blue. How about orange? The team just goes crazy at that point. Why? Because they will turn everything to orange. I thought you said you like blue. CEOs don't give suggestions. So be careful what you say as a leader. But going back to the micromanaging, you need to be sometimes more disagreeable with your bosses. And to some of you, that's very difficult because you're naturally agreeable. And what does that mean? It means, for example, let's say a vice president, Pastor Biaggi, okay? So he's the vice president of the General Conference for Communication. So he's my boss's boss. He comes to me and says, Sam, what we need is to do this. And we need to do that, this, and this way. Thank goodness he's a great leader. He does not micromanage. But let's imagine that he was doing it at some point. A great first reaction would be, absolutely, Pastor. We will absolutely do this. This is doable and we can do it. If I understood correctly, you want to achieve this, and this, correct? Yes, that's what we want to achieve. Okay, then I will suggest a different strategy because we can do that, and then we'll get the results we need. What do you think? So your immediate reaction isn't disagreeable. You agree, but you are establishing, and you can go on to a half an hour of conversation after that, pointing out why the way that you're doing this is better because you know your stuff. And by the end of that conversation, two things will happen. There will be less micromanaging and there will be more trust. Now, this is particularly to agreeable people that are listening. If you've been asked to do a job that is highly specific, let's say marketing, copywriting, or something else, the more, if you're agreeable all the time, your leader will lose respect for you. You cannot just follow what he says. You have, if what they're saying is right, absolutely follow it. But if what they're saying is not right, then you should absolutely mention it. And you should say, but remember, don't say, you're wrong. Not a good way to start a sentence. Start with, we absolutely need to do that because the objective of this project is really important. So you establish that you actually want the same thing, as Karen was saying. The quality of this needs to be amazing. And okay, you agree on what needs to be the result. Now you're giving a better way to get there. Be more disagreeable and you will get more respect and you will get more jobs coming your way because you can be trusted. So that's a nuance. Is Brad Kemp still here?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad, I've followed your leadership for a few years now, and I see that you're you don't appear in any of the meetings and so on that we have to micromanage. You seem to give amazing freedom to your teams. We talked about leaders that do micromanage. How can you be so comfortable not micromanaging?
Yeah, there's some basic principles, Sam. Firstly, you've got to trust your leaders to do what you give them to do, but you also need to verify. So you trust but verify. So you check in every now and then, see how they're going, provide support where it's needed. Look at and just meet with them on a regular basis. So you've got to trust them to do the job you've given them to do. There's a thing called dirty delegation. I don't know whether you've heard of that concept.
I haven't.
It came in a book written by somebody, Albrecht, called Social Intelligence. Book worth reading. And he looks at different leadership attributes or things. And one of those is dirty delegation, where you give someone something to do, but then you take over. So you undermine their leadership. That doesn't work well. And the stuff you're talking about really fits right into that category of the kind of thing you'd call dirty delegation, where you ask them to do a job, but then if you're not happy with it, you take it over in some form rather than working with them to become successful. The other thing is, you look at the makeup of your team and its competence. So within your team, people are at different stages in their development. So how do you help them grow and develop? What do you do? So in my team, I don't lead in everything. At the moment, we're working through a book well, which is on brand story or story brand. Mm-hmm. Am I leading that process? No. I'm part of the process, but I have one of my managers who's more familiar with that, actually reading the process for the organisation. So he's up front running it, and I'm there supporting and encouraging and being part of the process. So it's a case of trusting your people, not undermining them in what you do. If there's something that's going a little off track, you just sit down with them, talk it through, and help them to develop and grow through that. So that's what I do. And it seems to work pretty well.
Excellent. Very helpful. For those of you that are not familiar, Brad is the head of the media center in the South Pacific Division in Sydney, Australia. So I was in a meeting with Brad, 14 hours ago at 7 a.m. for me, whatever it was for him. And here we are again, many hours later. So thank you, Brad, for that, for those insights. Eric, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the biggest challenges with this book is that there's just too many things to focus on. I'm looking at the list, I'm like, at least 10 of these are way too close to home for my comfort level. So yeah, at this point, I'm just putting the list up on my wall and can't see it with my background, but anyway, it's going to take a while to memorize.
Yeah, this is why I said I go back to this book every 6 months. There are parts of it that I can finish the paragraph memorized. So for me, it's an important book because my instinct is to do the opposite on many of these, and it's being helpful to learn through it. Other thoughts from other attendees or panelists from what we discussed? Giselle is asking here, this question came to mind when you mentioned not responding when you're angry and waiting for when you are calm. What if they take your silence as an offense also, meaning they get even more angry if you remain silent? Some persons, unfortunately, want you to get your act up and respond negatively to whatever personal reasons. That is very true. And this is when, you know, you need to step back and having the ability to simply say, I need to process this. I am not sure how to respond. You don't have to respond. In fact, the less you respond, but don't just be quiet and go in a mood. You know, you communicate that and said, I'm not sure how to respond in a situation like this. I need some time. So could you please give me some time? If they carry on screaming, then, you know, your office needs to review its policies. But beyond that, if they don't calm down, in other words, you just keep repeating yourself again and again and again. And the more calm you are, the more they will lose it. And once you lose your patience, you basically lose everything. So, you know, retain your ground, never scream, never raise your voice unless you're excited, but not in anger. And retain that control. And even if every cell in your body is asking you to fight, don't, because you will lose it, especially if you're the leader. So, you know, have that ability to just take a step back. I'm not sure how to respond to this yet. I'm going to need some time. So let's stop and then we'll revisit this later.
Yeah, Sam, you're right. And
Yeah.
It's important to acknowledge that something's been said. Otherwise, they think you're ignoring them. So you've got to find a way of acknowledging, buying some time so that things can settle down and you can actually deal with it in a more constructive environment.
Yeah. Here's another thought that is really important. Sometimes if you're the leader and you have somebody that is acting in a way that is not appropriate and they're being disrespectful, or they sent an angry email to you, or there is this general culture of responding quickly. Don't. If you want to give them a courtesy, then do it slowly and just mention something. You don't have to prove your leadership capacity. That's been given to you already. You don't have to demonstrate it. So what you can do is just to say very little. And I promise you, if somebody sent an angry email to you and you're their leader, and it's been now 6 hours, you haven't said anything. Now 12 hours, you haven't said anything. 24 hours, you haven't said anything. 36, 48. It's been a week and you did not mention it. That itself helps to solve the problem. Okay? Because they've been thinking of this by themselves throughout the whole process. They've managed to calm down themselves, and you retain, the ball is in your court. So if somebody's in particularly disrespectful to you for whatever reason, don't speak lots of words. You don't feel the need to explain yourself fully. Just a few words that you can, you know, if you want to give them that courtesy, speak a few words and say, here, this is important. And that's it. You don't have to prove yourself. You're already the leader. What are they going to do? So, you know, that's how you establish your leadership. In fact, it's less speaking. If you're an extrovert, speak less. If you're an introvert, you're all right. Karen. Unmuted is a lot easier. I mean, you could scream, but go ahead.
No, something I thought was really cool, that it says you'll never learn less by listening. You know, that was just, you know, sometimes you think you're going to lose by listening, but you never learn less by listening. And you need to make a stop list, not a to-do list. And for some of us who are very list driven and trying to get everything done, you know, to make a stop list instead of to-do list. And another thing that really struck me is, you know, challenge up, but support down.
Oh, that's a great one. Yes. Talk to us about that.
So if you have a boss situation that you need to work things through, it's okay, like you said, to agree where you can agree, and don't start with the words like no or anything else, but you can challenge, because you're in a leadership position and you can challenge the boss. But to the people that are beneath you or beside you, you've got to be supportive down, because
Okay.
that's what a good leader does, provided there isn't anything unethical or illegal going on. But yeah.
Drill it down for us a little bit more. So your boss decides that they're going to do something that you disagree with.
Right.
What do you do?
Well, I've had opportunities with that a few times in my life. So,
well, if you had a boss, you had opportunities with that.
Right.
Your life.
I mean, at some point in your life, you have an opportunity for that. So, it's true, agreeing with them in every way that you can at first, especially on the things that matter, like the direction that he wants to take the company, usually is fine. You may not agree with the specifics of how to get there, but you can agree with the basics. And so I will often say things like, I absolutely agree with you. That is extremely important, and we need to focus on that. And then past that, you might, you might ask a few questions, because sometimes in asking questions, then things come clearer. And outside of asking questions, you can also negotiate a little bit. Like, I was wondering, I absolutely agree we need to do this. Would it be okay if along with this, I tried this as well and just see how it works? But to the people below you who may be disrespecting the boss from sitting there going, he's just so stupid and he does the dumbest things, and say, you know what, he's got the direction of the company right.
Let me take this.
You can,
yeah, go ahead.
Then you can be supportive of the direction it's going without necessarily having to talk about the specific thing that you also don't agree with.
Let me take this a little bit further, because you're mentioning something that you could go along with, you just disagree. There are times that you absolutely don't believe and it shouldn't go along, and you need to make a stand. So how do you do that? It's very simple. Beginners in teams, what beginners do is that they are a leader. So they're a leader of their team, and they talk to their boss, and they come to their boss, and their boss says, okay, this is where we're going, and this is how we're getting there. And they disagree with it. So they say a couple of things and say, well, that's not going to work. Well, that's where I want you to do. Now, when they come to their team, how do they start the sentence? Look, the boss wants us to do this way. I don't think that's right, but we need to do it. Okay. Sometimes, very rarely, it's important that you mention, who cares about this and etc. But most of the time, no. Most of the time you challenge up, have your fight with the boss. And sometimes Williams and I have incredible discussions. I'm saying discussions because none of us scream or shout, but they will go on for a long time, sometimes days, sometimes weeks on things we disagree with. But here's the thing. Once he decides where we're going, or we decide together, our team has no idea of our disagreements. Why? Because I support down. And once I support, this is it. Because sooner or later, if you always come to your team and says, well, that's what the boss wants, so we're going to do it. Then if they want to talk to somebody that has any voice in the organization, they know they shouldn't even talk to you, because you have no power. You're just following orders. If they want to talk to somebody that rules and can make a difference to their project, they just need to go to the boss, because clearly you don't decide anything. So this is a really important thing for you in leadership. Challenge up. Feel free to challenge your leaders on the level of ideas. Okay, so the best idea has to win, but once they make a call and say, okay, I'm sorry, this is it, whether you agree with it or not. And we can talk about this later, but this is the direction we're going. Well, then team, that's the direction we're going. But why? Because of this, this, and this. Repeat the reasons as if they're yours. Are you acting with less integrity? No. You have an opportunity to speak at a certain forum. Use it. Once you leave that forum, you're in support. A lot of local churches don't understand this. If you are a board member, okay, so this is something for you to understand in terms of of any really public company or church. So if you're a board member in a local church and there is some item that came up for discussion and you happen to disagree with it, but the majority voted, you said your piece, and they still voted against what you believe is the best way forward, well, that's your opportunity to speak. You don't go around calling church members saying, you never believe what happened. They just voted this, but in the business meeting, we need to vote the opposite. Just don't do it. You're not worthy of the leadership you've been called for if that's your attitude. Don't do it. Quit the church board, but don't do that. If you absolutely cannot go along with the decision, that's exactly what you should do. Quit. And say, I can no longer work with this body, and I would like to quit the church board. I'll be a member, and I'll have my voice at the board meeting, at the business meeting. So if you're not familiar with the Adventist church, this is how it works. Every major decision in a local church is decided by a board, or the board discusses it and brings to a business meeting. A business meeting is where all members can come, discuss, and vote. It's an open meeting for all church members that have their names in that local church. So if you have a voice in a forum, once you leave that forum, you are in support of whatever decision the forum decided. And that goes for company boards, that goes for every other. That's an ethical principle that you should bear in mind. Okay, next here. How do you deal with a cynic on the team? You fire them. Cynicism and sarcasm have no room in a team. I cannot think of an exception. Maybe you disagree with me, and maybe you have a different opinion. I would love to hear it now, because I'd love for my mind to be changed. But I've never seen a team that had a cynic lead to something good. Usually it's the destruction of the team, because cynicism and sarcasm, they're cousins. They lead to mistrust. Cynicism and sarcasm, they are a how do you call it? It's a symptom of the lack of trust that exists already in the team. And you begin to get cliques. Some get the joke and some don't. And usually the cynicism and sarcasm are either about another organization within your building at best, or about other team members at worst. And I've never seen anything good come out of people that have as a way of life cynicism and sarcasm. What if you're not the boss? Then send this to your boss. When the video comes out, send it to them and say, hey, watch about minute, 74, 1 hour 14, watch it, and you will see a part about cynicism and sarcasm. I don't think anything good can come of it. And by the time it gets to that, the person should probably move on to another team. And if you're the leader, why don't you suggest that? And say, I think your contributions to our team have reached their peak, and you may look for another opportunity for your gifts and talents. Eric.
Yeah, so I think this is something that can be a little cultural. Being South African myself, in British culture, there's a sarcasm that chips away at people, and there's a slightly more sometimes positive sarcasm. In America, it's all negative. So I found that you use sarcasm here in a business setting, not a great idea, but I don't know if it's just the cultural dynamic, but yeah, growing up, it was a lot more commonplace in South Africa. And so for me, it's more well received, and it doesn't tend to harm dynamics, but it seems to be a cultural element sometimes.
My wife is British, mate. I understand that very, very well. And I think it applies to South Africa. And I would love to be wrong. I think it applies to Australia as well. There is a difference between joking and cynicism and sarcasm.
Exactly.
Okay, there is a big difference. So I'm talking about here, I'm not talking about the odd, banter. Banter is different.
Yeah.
Okay, banter is one thing.
That's more what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Cynicism and sarcasm, no. Sometimes they may look the same if you're not familiar with the culture, but they really are not the same. They are very different. So, all right. Hands or thoughts? We have another few minutes.
I don't know if we have spoke about the coaching. I think the book also talked about mentorship. Kind of the idea of you have to kind of share, and you mentioned something about it, how it should be in a team, or the leader, it should be available to growth. And I think when the leader has that attitude, it's contagious, and it helps the other members to have the same attitude, because they can be very, you can focus on very details, but if you as a leader also show that opening to growth, I think that's something very, very important. It's like for parents and kids, when you are willing to say, hey, you know, I am sorry, kind of, or I need to learn this, or so I didn't do this right. I think it opens a bridge, or establishes a stronger relationship with that person. And I think that's, I believe, a key element when to be in developing trust in a team. Because when you have the trust of everybody around you, then there's so many things that you can accomplish. But as a leader, you have to always be kind of having that in mind. How can I show my vulnerability? Not in a point that I don't know, like I'm weak, or I don't know where I'm heading, but also for them to know, yes, I'm available to grow, and we can grow together. And I think more and more, and with time, the leadership is all, it's getting into that trend that you have to be kind of not be in this pedestal where you are, I know it all and you follow me, instead of we all pull together the wagon, not I tell you how to pull the wagon. And I think that's key when you want to create a team that it's highly motivated, creative, when their opinions are valuable, because then you create that easiness of, you know what, let's do this. Okay, like let's talk about it. Of course, like it says, it's not like you're gonna go for every single idea, but you can create an environment of discussion, a healthy discussion.
Yeah, thank you. There is this interesting dynamic between creativity and hierarchy. So here's my observation: if you want to be in a creative environment, you need to remove hierarchy from the room. Okay, this is very important. When we started the Digital Evangelism Initiative, we invited all of the different heads of the different departments and entities like Hope Channel, AWR, Adventist Review, etc. But we had the understanding that they would leave the room at some point, because we called ourselves the SOS, the seconds on the sofas, because we put some sofas down in the studio in the GC, and we allow for brainstorming. And something really special happened. There was no hierarchy. There was no competition between us. There was no boss saying something. Because here's the thing about bosses. When they act in the capacity of boss, they do not give suggestions. They give orders. And it's very difficult to be creative when there is hierarchy. If there is a petri dish, hierarchy is impossible for creativity or for anything to be created growth-wise in a brainstorming. If there is hierarchy, you need to remove it. So if you want to be part of a brainstorming process, just at the beginning and constantly, the best idea has to win. It doesn't matter who comes up with it. Now, once you come out of the brainstorming and you decide this is where we're going and this is how we're doing it, well, guess what? Nothing will happen without hierarchy. How much will happen? Nothing. Can you imagine a film set where you don't know what the hierarchy is? Have you ever been to a film set? You know exactly what the hierarchy is. You know that the director of photography has oversight over this area. You know the sound guy is this guy. You know the director is the one who says action. Imagine if one of the actors decides that they're going to say action. No, you know, there is an absolute hierarchy in a very creative environment. Why? Because the creation has happened to some degree, and now they're trying to deliver on it. So if you want to deliver on a project, you need hierarchy. The execution of the creative process needs hierarchy. The brainstorming and the planning and where the creative things actually come, then there can be no hierarchy. So that's a for me, a fascinating dynamic, because I love creativity and I love execution. And I've been trying to understand this dynamics for years. And that's basically where I've landed. Good. I've got one more question here from Sonia, which Sonia is asking the age-old questions. She says, it's off topic. What if you are a leader in the church and your pastor is really not up to par? And your pastor is not really leading, and you wish he would do this, this, and this differently. Said every church member in the history of Christianity. Yes, it is very possible that all of this learning is actually a curse for you, because you can be in a local church and you are noticing how much better the local church could be if the leaders there did something, follow these things. Now, my experience is people get it when they get it and not a moment sooner. People get it when they get it and not a moment sooner. Find a way to inspire and to take your pastor to the next level of leadership. I don't know how you're going to do that. Pray for it. Tell the pastor, we need a vigil. What for? We need a vigil so that God will help us get it. And between you and God, you know what you mean. And you pray for him, and you pray for his family, and you pray that God will find a way to get through to him and to you. So it's a constant. And this is why I love doing a week of prayers, because you go to a church, you do a week of prayer, you're the hero, and then you leave. It's wonderful. And when you're the visiting pastor, you're always loved. When you are the pastor of the church, there are many people that notice all your incompetences, all the ways that you could be better. And the more people can help you, the better. So my encouragement is for you to try and help him grow. Good, guys, this is it. We're going to call it off unless somebody has a burden to say something incredibly important. No? Okay, good. Thank you very much. I will ask, let me see. Leandro hasn't said much. If you're there, Leandro, would you mind praying for us?
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, can I share something first then?
Yeah, sure.
One thing that I think would connect with this subject is something very important in a book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. And that's a challenge, and that's a very smart book. I would recommend it. But it talks about this pocket of something amazing that you can create. So of course you had the things that you have to be concerned about, the guidelines of the things that I have to do, but inside that you can create a pocket of greatness. That's how the book speaks about it. And sometimes you have a leader, you have the things that you have to do, you have to understand how to be part of the team, but yes, you can work on that. And that's a great lesson that I learned. Anyway.
Excellent, thank you.
We can pray.
Please.
Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here, for all of us from all parts of the world, to be with you, to be connected, to be learning, how to be better, to accomplish your mission here at this on earth. May you bless Pastor Sam. May you bless his ministry as we learn with him as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. You've been watching the book club. I will see you next week.